everyone, welcome to video 2 for the Begonia Drawstring backpack. This video here we're going to sew up the front exterior panel, so the one that has the 2 zipper pockets. Again, I'll just pull up my sample. So we're going to be sewing up this half of the bag on the front. Okay, so what you're going to need to start are your 2 zipper tabs and your zippers. And it's pretty straightforward. You're going to place one of the zipper tabs on your work surface, right side facing up, and place the open end of your zipper. So here it's hard to tell because I use zipper tape and I like to keep it closed, so it just makes it nicer to sew if I don't open the zipper all the way. But this is the open end of the zipper right here, okay? So I'm placing that on top, and then I'm going to take the second zipper tab. I'm going to put that so that it's right sides facing. And then I'll just pin that. So now I'm going to go over to my machine and I'm going to sew through the 2 zipper tabs and the zipper with a 1/2 inch seam allowance from this edge. And then I'm also going to backstitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, so I've sewn all the layers together now, and I'm just going to press them away from the zipper along along both sides. So on the front here and on the wrong side as well. I'll flip it over and press, and then I'm going to go over to my machine and I'm going to just top stitch here with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so it's now top stitched. Need to trim my threads. Okay, so now we're going to open this up and you're going to fold in the bottom piece, wrong sides together, 1/2 inch. And the way to tell that it's 1/2 inch is that the raw edges of the zipper tabs in the middle should be meeting, like so. And then I'm going to do the same for this one. So you want to make sure that they're meeting here. Okay, and press that. My little iron is cute, but it's not as good as a full-size iron. Okay, then you're going to take your second zipper and you're going to insert it in the layers here, so that it's 1/2 inch inside those zipper tabs. I'm going to pin that in place and try to make sure that this is all like, it's like a nice straight line all together, okay? And then another way to make sure that you're doing this correctly is that your zipper tab now, the width here should be 1 inch, okay? I'm going to go over to the machine, and this time I'm just going to sew through all these layers with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance from this folded edge of the zipper tab. Okay, so there you go. I have the 2 zippers attached with a zipper tab in the middle. Just flip it over, make sure that everything is all sewn together nicely. Okay, set this aside for just a second, and then take your zipper pocket lining pieces. I'm going to pull these out of my pile of pieces. Okay, and just on one of the pieces only, I want you to cut away 1 inch. It could be the top, the bottom, it doesn't matter. Okay, so now you're going to end up with one zipper pocket lining piece that is 1 inch taller than the other. See? Okay? So now you're going to take these, fold them in half, wrong sides together, and I want you to mark the center along the top edge. Okay, and do the same for the second piece. Okay. And for the zipper tabs, I will also need the center marks on these ones. And I'm going to see here, I have a white pencil that'll show a little bit better here. So you just want to make a mark on the top center here. And you can actually make it on all sides just in case. I find it's good to just mark the centers no matter what. Okay, so now you're going to take the shorter lining piece and place it right side facing up. You should have that center mark at the top. And then you're going to take your zipper and you're going to line up that center mark of your zipper tab with that center mark on the lining piece. Now, one important note here is if your zipper tab is using a directional print, you're going to want to have it upside down in this step. Now, I'm not using a directional print, so it doesn't make a difference. But if you have a directional print, you want it upside down because when we press the lining piece away, this will end up being the bottom part and this will be the top part, so you want the print facing the right direction. Okay, so I'm just going to finish pinning this. So here you have your lining piece right side facing up, and you should also have your zippers right side facing up. And if using a directional print, this is upside down right now. Okay, so I'm going to go over to my machine and I am just going to quickly base this in place with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so the zipper is now attached to the zipper pocket lining piece. Now you're going to take your lower zipper panel. So while I'm marking centers here, I'm going to mark centers on both. Now you want to fold them in half, right sides together, and while we're at it, mark the center along the top and the bottom. Okay, and for your upper, you're only going to need to mark the center at the top. Now this is important if you're using a directional print, that you're making the marks in the right area, like so along the top or the bottom. It makes a difference. And I'll tell you where you need to have your prints upside down. So now you're going to take your lower zipper panel and you want to have the top center mark aligned with that center mark in the zipper tab. Okay, now when we press it away, we want it to be right side facing up this way. Okay, so in this step, it should be upside down. Okay, so I'm going to clip this along the top edge, and then I'm going to go over to my machine and sew them together. And this time I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm going to backstitch at the beginning and the end. And when you're sewing these together, pause and move your zipper pulls out of the way as you're sewing so that you can keep sewing in a nice straight line and your zipper pulls are not interfering with your stitching. Okay, so I'm going to go over and sew with 1/4 inch seam allowance along this top edge and backstitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, so I've sewn through all the layers here with 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm just going to press away from my zipper using my cute little iron that is cute but doesn't work all that great. Nothing beats a full-size iron for this sort of job, but it's compact, so it's actually a great little travel size. And I got it for my retreats, but for a little while I was doing paper piecing, and it actually works amazing for that. Okay, flip this over and do the same for this lining piece. And then when you've pressed these two pieces away from the zipper, you can go back to your machine and top stitch the seam allowance. Okay, all done. Okay, so now I'm just going to go over to my machine and I'll top stitch here with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so I've top stitched underneath here. Now I'm just going to take the remaining zipper pocket lining piece. So this is the taller one. And again, I'm going to place this over top so everything is right side facing up. I'm going to line up those center marks. And I'm just going to base the zipper to the top edge here with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so I'm going to go over to my machine and do that now. Okay, so now I've got this the second lining piece attached, so they should be right sides facing. And now I want to divide this into 2 separate pockets. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to just flip this up out of the way, and I'm going to sew the bottom edges of my zipper pocket lining pieces together. Don't worry too much if they're not perfectly aligned. That's not a problem. Just make sure that when you're sewing, you're capturing both, you're getting both pieces in the seam. And so just sew along the bottom edge here and make sure that you backstitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, so these 2 pieces are sewn together along the bottom. I'm just going to flip this back down, and now what we want to do is we want to separate this into 2 separate pockets. So we have that center mark here in the middle of our zipper tab, and I just transferred the center mark here to the front. We're just going to sew from this mark to this mark. I'm just going to put some clips so the layers don't move around while I do this. Okay, so we're just sewing from this center mark to this center mark, and then we'll have our 2 separate pockets. Okay, so everything is separated, and I just want to trim the bottom edges here so everything is lined up with the bottom of the lower zipper panel, which is my gray sprinkly fabric. Okay. Just make it more clear when we're attaching the bottom piece where we should be sewing that on. Now we're going to take our very last panel piece here, the upper panel, and I have my center mark here. So I'm just going to start by lining that up so they should be right sides facing. Okay, and align all of these, and then I'm going to sew this piece to this top edge, and you're sewing through the zipper, this upper zipper panel, the zipper, and then this bottom zipper pocket lining piece. So you're sewing with 1/4 inch seam allowance, and you're making sure to backstitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, so I've sewn through all these layers. Now I'm just going to press this the top layer, so the upper zipper panel. That is the only layer that you should be pressing away from the zipper. So the lining pocket piece is going to be staying facing downwards. Get my zipper out of the way. Okay. And then these little threads are bugging me. I forgot to trim my threads here. So now I'm going to go over to the machine, and I'm just going to do my top stitching here along this seam allowance here with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so I top stitched here. Now I'm just going to go over to the machine, and I'm just going to base stitch these sides here together because I don't want my layers to shift while I finish assembly. So just do some base stitching from here to the bottom corners. Now you need to take your bottom piece, and we need to cut out the squares at the bottom corners so that we can box our corners later on. So you're just going to take a ruler. I like using my clear ruler for this, and a pen that works would be even better. And you're just going to draw a little square at the bottom corner that is 1.5 inches wide by 1.5 inches high, and then you're going to cut out that corner. And you're going to do this for the bottom 2 corners. And you're going to repeat this for the second bottom piece. So you should be cutting out a total of 4 little squares. Okay, so repeat the same thing for the second bottom piece. Okay, so I have the corners cut out of both bottom pieces. I'll set one aside for now. I'm going to take my zipper panel exterior and I'm going to line up the edge that doesn't have the corners like this with the bottom edge here of the exterior zipper panel. Okay, and I'm going to sew this together with my regular 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Make sure that you backstitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, so the bottom is sewn on here. If you are using fabric, you're going to want to press it away and then top stitch. I can't press cord, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my machine. I'll just finger press it and I will top stitch here as I'm finger pressing it away. I also backstitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, so the bottom piece is attached here to the front of my bag. I'm going to set that aside. And before we end this video, we're just going to attach the last bottom piece to the exterior back panel. If I can dig it up. Okay. I'm just going to take this, and I have it the wrong way. That's okay. Like so. And I'm just repeating what I did to attach it to the front zippered panel. I'm going to sew it together with my regular 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then I'm going to finger press away from the exterior back panel while I top stitch. And that's all we're going to do in this video. In the next video, we're going to start by sewing up our drawstring connectors.